Alright, Shalom. First and foremost, I'm going to start this lesson off by giving all the praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem, Rakakwadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Honors to all the brothers who are still fervently preaching the word in sincerity and in faith. Shalom to all the sincere Akwath, which are the sincere sisters. And Shalom to the scattered Israelites of the hopeful elect who are amongst these heathen nations and now look like these heathen nations after being scattered amongst them for so long. Now this lesson is going to be primarily based around the fact that Americans, and on a smaller level, MAGA, Trump's little fan base, is divided against themselves, and how that's going to result in civil wars and race war here in America. So I'm going to read some precepts, and Adawan Ratzazah, you're edified. Oh, it says Mark 3:23, and he called unto them, and he called them unto him, and said unto them in parables, how can Satan cast out Satan? Verse 24, and if a kingdom be divided against itself, that kingdom cannot stand. And America is divided. Someone said a couple of years back that that the United States is no longer, is not the United States. It's actually the divided states, because you have the blue states versus the red states. You have Democrats versus Republicans. You have a lot of racial division. So America is actually not united. They're very much divided, and they've been divided for a very long time. And that's part of why this place is crumbling, because nobody is on the same page here. Everybody sees things differently, and everybody's clashing with each other. Verse 25, it says, and if a house be divided against itself, that house cannot stand. And this is talking about Esau. We can apply this to Esau, the Edomites, these so-called white people, the house of Edom. They're divided because, like I said, you have Edomites that are Democrats and you have Edomites that are Republicans. You have Edomites that, live in the blue states. You have Edomites that live in the red states. You have Edomites that are fully against Trump and all his wickedness. And then you have the Edomites that are completely okay with all of Trump's wickedness. So they're that house of Edom, these so-called white people, they're divided against themselves, and they can't stand. The thing about these Edomites is they're the weakest nation. The Lord made them that way. And they've been lying to each other for centuries, saying that they're better than everybody. Telling each other, oh yeah, we're superior to all these brown-skinned people, when in reality, they're not. The only reason why these so-called white people are ruling the world right now is because the Lord put them in that position. He's using them, first and foremost, to punish the Israelites, who primarily make up so-called blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans, and then, of course, those of our people who are scattered amongst these heathen nations and look like these heathens. He's using Esau to punish these other nations as well, because they're under Esau to an extent. They're still above us, but they're under Esau. And the Lord is using Esau to show us what real wickedness looks like. because these Edomites, they have destroyed the world. They've poisoned the air, they've poisoned the water, they created fake food, they've genocided, entire nations of people. They've caused entire species of animals to go extinct. Like, these Edomites, they are just the complete opposite of life. Everything they touch, they destroy. And the world is seeing that. And as time goes by, the Lord is opening the eyes of a lot more people, and they're calling out these Edomites for being wicked. The whole world is turning against these Edomites. So that's when you know that they're going down. Nobody's on their side anymore. Nobody's backing them anymore. Like, here in America, America's own allies are turning against her. Canada's turning against the US. The UK is turning against the US. France, Italy, Germany. They're all turning against the US because, in particular, Donald Trump is just screwing up everything. Starting illegal wars. He's constantly disrespecting the leaders of these other nations, calling them cowards, calling them weak, putting tariffs on them. He's making all these wicked, illegal moves that result in his quote-unquote allies getting hurt. Here it is. They're supposed to be the U.S.'s allies. Trump is supposed to be looking out for them. But instead, he's just worried about himself. And the moves that he's making are hurting the American people that he claims he cares about so much. And it's also hurting the U.S.'s allies. Because when Trump was, campaigning to become the president, he was talking about how he was going to put America first and put Americans first. But yet everything that he's done since he got elected has been the complete opposite. Americans are suffering more. He's still sending billions and billions of dollars over to Israel. He got the U.S. involved in this illegal war with Iran that has basically wasted billions and billions of dollars. So much military equipment and military bases have been destroyed. U.S. soldiers have died or been wounded. So much chaos has happened in the world since this wicked man got in that White House. And everybody is just so fed up with him. It hasn't even been a full year, and everybody's already tired of him. Like the man was talking about wiping out the entire civilization of Iran, basically nuking them off the face of the earth. And there were a lot of people, who supported Trump, who were on his side, so to speak, up until that point. Because there have been a lot of, Trump supporters on TikTok that have been like, that was the line crossed for them. Him saying that he was going to just wipe out Iran, like an entire civilization of about 90 million people. He was just going to, just erase them. Basically, just commit a genocide, because he knew that the U.S. was losing that war that they started, that he started, and he has too much pride and too much of an ego to admit that he was wrong in starting this war. The billions of dollars that are wasted, all the people that have died because of this war, that's all his fault. Him and, Netanyahu. And Trump doesn't want to admit that he was wrong. So instead, he just keeps upping the ante and upping the ante and pushing things further and further and making things worse and worse. And when he said on his Truth Social that a whole civilization was gonna die, or something to that extent, a lot of people were genuinely terrified. And I'm talking about people here in America, because people were like, this man is seriously talking about nuking a country of like 90 million people, all because things are not going the way he wants them to. Like, that's the type of person that's sitting in that White House with the ability to launch nukes. Someone who physically is like 80 years old, but mentally is a child. And he's throwing a tantrum when things don't go his way. And there's some Trump supporters who, it seems, because you can never really believe anything when it comes to these Edomites, but it seems like some of them woke up when he said that he was going to, that he basically was going to wipe out those Iranians. There are some Trump supporters who woke up and they were like, yeah, that's too far. Which, that doesn't make them good people either, because they supported him and all the wicked things that he has done up until this point. Now all of a sudden they want to act like they grew a conscience and they don't want to support him anymore. And that in itself is causing division amongst the MAGA crowd, because you have the people who still, are die-hard Trump supporters who are pissed off at the ones who are saying that Trump, kind of took things too far with that threat that he made. And the die-hard Trump supporters are like, well, if you're going to turn against Trump, then you never really supported him. So these Edomites are just divided against each other all across the board. And they're going to fall due to that division. Luke 12:51, suppose ye that I am come to give peace on earth? I tell you, nay, but rather division. And that's right. And that's exactly what the Lord is doing. The Lord is bringing that division. And these Edomites, whether they're here in America or in other parts of the world, they're all divided. And that division is going to lead to conflict. And that conflict is going to turn into a full-fledged war in which America is going to get nuked off the face of the earth. And also Israel. The only difference is that Israel, being the Lord's chosen land, his favorite place on earth, that's going to be rebuilt by these Edomites and other heathen nations once the kingdom of heaven gets established. These Edomites are going to build up the kingdom of heaven for free. That's where the 1,000 years of hardcore, brutal slavery is going to come from. Because they have to pay for all the atrocities that they have committed. And all the Edomites that want to sit here and talk about, I wasn't alive back then, during slavery and all of that, so I had nothing to do with that, because they're simple and they don't understand reincarnation. The scriptures tell us that every third or fourth generation you come back. So you die and then 3 or 4 generations later, the Lord brings you back. So these Edomites very much were a part of slavery. So they do have to pay for that. They did participate in that. They just don't recall doing it because you don't remember your past life. But these Edomites, they're trying to escape their judgment, and there is no escape. They've done all this wickedness for centuries, and now they think that they get to just ride off into the sunset like they never did anything. And that's just not how that works. They have to pay. The Lord himself said that they will pay. And so that's what's going to happen. And the fact that they're divided against each other and they're clashing with each other, not so much physically yet, more so verbally and, online, that right there is a sign of their downfall. And it's an absolutely beautiful thing to see. These Edomites going against each other. They're never going to get on the same page. And us living to see the fall of our enemy is going to be the best thing ever, apart from being in the kingdom, of course. But I believe it's Sirach 25:7, where it says, there be 9 things which I have judged in mine heart to be happy, and the 10th I will utter with my tongue. A man that have joy of his children, and he that liveth to see the fall of his enemy. We're witnessing the fall of our enemy. It hasn't gone full blown yet, but like I said, just the fact of them clashing against each other all over the internet, them being divided on, who supports Trump and who doesn't, who's for, like interracial relationships and who isn't. A lot of these Edomites, they are pedophiles and they like to mess with children. And then there's the side of the Edomites that are against that. So it's like they clash on that. It's just like they're clashing against each other on every possible thing. And those of us of the hopeful elect, we get to just sit back and watch and continue to prophesy their downfall. So to be honest, as chaotic and as tense and as volatile as things are, it's actually very beautiful because these are all signs of, first and foremost, the downfall of our enemy, and also the fact that the kingdom of heaven is getting closer. The time of the Heavenly Father, Yahweh, sending Yahweh Shai back to deliver the elect, which Adawan Ratazah, myself and all you sincere brothers and sisters are a part of, it's very close. So none of us should be sad. None of us should be depressed. We should be joyful. Because our affliction, our captivity, our oppression is almost at an end. And in regard to these Edomites, their affliction and their oppression and their captivity is about to really begin. The Lord is about to flip the script, basically. We're about to go up, and these Edomites are about to go down. So with that, I'm going to wrap it up here. In closing, I want to give all the praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushai, Bahashem, Rakakwadash, the Wadi Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushai, for putting the spirit on me to do this lesson. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Honors to all the brothers who are fervently preaching the word in sincerity and in faith. Shalom to all the sincere Akwath, and shalom to the scattered Israelites of the hopeful elect who are amongst these heathen nations and look like these heathens. I hope you all stay strong, stay safe, stay fervent, stay circumspect, stay prayed up, and Adawan Ratazah. Until next time, shalom.